Hey everybody, welcome to the Division 1 meeting. We're glad you're here. Thanks for being here. We appreciate all the smiling faces. We've got people online with us. I see Cole did make it right at the meeting time. He was starting to worry me. All right.
Better late than never.
Better late than never. We're glad you're here. I think Gordy's going to join us. We've got. Where did Mossy go? Is Mossy online?
He's online. He just went and got something.
Okay, all right. So we've got folks joining us literally from around the world, so we're glad everybody's here. Quick items to talk about today, and then we'll get right into things. Want to thank the Texas Western, as we always do, for allowing us to meet here. Thanks, David. David, stand up for just a minute.
Sure, Mike.
Membership wise, where's the club? What's going on there? If you can...
Mike, we are growing. We are growing. This year, we've added about 6 new members.
Okay.
And we've got about 3 more in the pipeline. So we're growing.
And so I think if my memory serves me right, about 38 members so far, is that about right?
That's about right, yeah.
38 members and growing, so that's great, that's great.
It's really great. And you know what, Mike? We still have room for more.
No.
Yes, yes, we do.
I wouldn't have ever guessed that.
Yes, we do. Thank y'all for coming to the Texas Western today. We hope you feel at home as always, and remember, after the meeting today, it's open run. We're not doing any work on the layout, so if you brought locomotives to run or play with, open run, and we've got 2 stations up front if you need to do some programming with JMRI. We've got 2 laptops up there and some Digitrax programmers, so you can do whatever you want to do. So welcome, glad you're here.
What's the status of the layout, upper and lower levels? Can you brief us on that real quick?
Upper level is probably, I would say, about 99% as far as bugs out of the layout. It's 99% runnable. We're still installing the last few panels to control the switches, but the upper level is just about ready to start some serious background painting, cloud painting, continuing with ballasting, putting down dirt.
Mr. Cowles has nothing to do with that, does he?
He has a lot to do with it.
Oh, is that right?
He
Okay.
has a lot to do with it. So we're very close to the upper level just exploding. But by the end of the year, you're going to see probably some significant differences, and in the first quarter, you won't recognize it. It'll start growing buildings every week.
Really? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Daryl.
You can run from the top level all the way down through the helix, all the way around the bottom level, and back up.
Cool.
We
That's
don't
great.
have panels finished for everything on the lower level, but we've got several done.
Okay, cool.
It takes a while.
Daryl, I bought a set of cloud templates from New London, yeah, from John. So if you guys need an extra set of templates, I'll be happy to let you guys borrow them whenever you start doing clouds.
We use those and then just take some heavy craft paper and tear it.
Yeah.
Use those as templates also.
Yeah, you can. So anyway, but I did buy those, so if you need them, you got a resource, okay? Let's see. D1 continues to grow. We're adding a couple of new members just about every month, so that's a good thing. Ken, you want to give us a membership report from the region standpoint, if you don't mind?
Yeah, we've been slowly gaining members over each month, only about 3 or 4. We're up to about 780 something right now. But we're still down like 200 from
Oh yeah, from when it used to be, yeah.
It used to be. So we still need to get more members, but the main problem is keeping the members we have.
Mhm.
You know, we are losing members every month.
Well, we're getting older.
But
You know, I did a analysis on the membership for Division 1, our division, okay? Do you believe there's only 3 people in the division younger than me? That's serious, guys. I'm the 4th youngest person in this division. We gotta get some new blood in here, guys. I mean, that's just all there is to it. Okay?
Cody, Casey, and Cole.
I think that's about right, yeah. I think that's about right. So, I will tell you this, I've got a project that I'm working on for national, and Dallas-Fort Worth is gonna be, if we can get everything taken care of on it. Was talking to Gordy on the way over here this morning, and we're still trying to get all the i's dotted and the t's crossed, but it's going to, if the project comes through, Dallas-Fort Worth's gonna be a pilot test market for the program. And it'll open the opportunity for us to expose the NMRA to an entirely different set of potential members and demographics than we've ever had the opportunity to do before. Typically, our organization always advertises in the railroad magazines or railroad related stuff where modelers are, right? Or in hobby shops. Well, this is going to open the door for us to be seen by people. And this all started with the 4014 thing. If that steam engine can come to town and we get 60,000 people to come out to see that steam engine, there's a lot of rail fans out there that we're not tapping into. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
And so if we can tap into those rail fans, and some of them, I will promise you, have train sets or doing something, they're just not participating in a group environment, okay, then that would make up for that 200 or 300 or 400 people, all right? So we're looking at a way to expose the NMRA in a environment to a demographic like you saw for 4014. And I've got some ideas on that. Yeah, Ken.
So when Big Boy came here, we signed up 13 people at that event.
That day.
That day.
Yeah. So, yeah. And so that's the whole concept. And I wrote an article. It should be published in the NMRA magazine for those of you who get it. If you don't, shame on you. But that's something else that's being worked on. We're
worth $33 a year.
There is a effort right now to take the magazine digital. So your $33 a year problem goes away. So, however, those of us who like to have a look and feel and to touch the paper and turn the page, it's a different environment for us now. So,
When will your article be published?
we don't know the answer to that yet,
Okay.
Clarence,
Okay.
because I haven't, Cynthia Priest, who's the editor of the magazine, has not given me feedback on when it's going to be published. It has been accepted. Okay. I will also tell you that at the meeting today, the narrow gauge, the HON3 annual is coming out in a few months. And in the meeting today are 3 authors that have got items and articles published in the HON3 annual that's coming out. Dwayne, Rich Mossholder, Mossy is one of our clinicians today in Santa Rosa. He's got an article in it, and I've got an article in it. So there's a lot of resource and a lot of information and talent available to Division I. Tap into it, use it, and it's being recognized around the nation as far as stuff that in publications. So, if you read, how many of you read the newsletter that came out this week from the division? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. About, yeah, the whistle. Yeah. Please read that. There's information in there that's critical, that's not always shared at this meeting. So I would urge you to please read the whistle. Okay. It's a quick read. But it's chock full of information. One of the things that in my president's column mention is, unfortunately, we are losing a very valued member to our division and to the Texas Western. Mike Corley is moving to Atlanta. And that is a huge asset for them and a loss for us. But I will tell you this, just so you guys know, I've already contacted Mike Cummings, who is the secretary for NMRA National, who lives in the area and is a member of the Piedmont Division. And by the way, the Piedmont Division is the world's largest division of the NMRA. And they've got, like, I want to say, just shy of 2,000 members in their division. Okay. And so I've got Mike Cummings going to contact Corley. And so he's going to get plugged in and he'll have some immediate friends over there. Yes, sir.
Any Frisco people down there?
I wouldn't know, but there will be when Mike gets there. That's for sure. So anyway, and I hope if you saw the NMRA magazine this month, the cover shot was all about a layout.
Yeah.
That's a Frisco layout that's going to be in St. Louis next year. So I haven't talked to Mike on that, but anyway, Mike Corley has been serving as our webmaster since I was elected 4 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever it was. With him leaving, we've got to find a new webmaster. I need somebody to step up, step in, raise their hand, and help us with our webmaster, being our webmaster, our website, and help us with our communication. Mike has already done all the heavy lifting, and we just got to have somebody to help maintenance it. If you've got any skill sets whatsoever that can transfer to that, please reach out and help us out with that. We've got to have somebody to do it. I have requested help in that area for the last couple of years, but this is a much more urgent plea. So we really need some help on that. So if you've got any skill sets there, please contact me after the meeting. Let me turn it over to Dwayne Richardson real quick for an AP report, and we'll go from there.
Dean Ferris, who is not with us here in the meeting today, will be getting 2 certificates in the mail. He reached out and we got to discussing where he was with a couple of things. He was featured on the cover of Railroad Model Craftsman last month. If you did not see that, that's a great magazine issue to get. But Dean earned his author certificate and his electrical. So he'll be putting both of these in the mail here in the next couple of days. Around the region, Don Wynn completed cars, and he has 7 out of 11, but like a lot of guys, he's going to get his MMR on 8, and he's putting the finishing touches on that. And the region's photographer, Michael Harang, is over in Louisiana. Him and his good wife are looking at moving back to D3 so they can be closer to their kids.
Right.
And he's starting a new layout in SN3, so we'll get him involved with our club, I'm sure.
Good.
But he also picked up his volunteer and his author, so he's got his head start going now.
Fantastic.
I was asked earlier this morning a couple of things. Where you can find more information about the program. If you can't catch me at one of these meetings for one reason or another, you can always get a hold of me at the house. My contact information's on the website.
What website?
LoneStarRegion.com. If you go out to the Nationals website, nmra.org, remember the .org. If you go to nmra.com, you end up with some sort of national maritime something or other. If you like boats, great way to go. If you like trains, wrong website. nmra.org, and in the top, in the navigation across the top of it, it says education. If you click on education, about the second drop down, the second entry in that drop down is achievement program. And in there will be everything you want to know. It'll break down all the categories, tell you what the requirements are, you know, what has the merit and how many have to be built and that kind of thing. If you've got any questions about that, reach out. The other thing that came up was, why should I bother working on my MMR? And you've heard me say this every month, it will make you a better modeler. And it really doesn't get any simpler than that. But the answer came back as the reply back was, okay, but why? And the big thing on that one is more mental than it is skill sets. You're going to learn new skill sets along the way, but there are mental things that you're going to pick up, and it's going to change the way you look at a project. So it changed the way you think about a project, how you plan something. You're not just going to sit down and just grab a box of stuff and just start going anymore. You're actually going to start thinking about it from if someone's going to look at this and they're going to score it, I need to be sure that this is here for that reason and this is there for that reason. And it's something that as a modeler, you just don't think about. Most guys will pull a box car out of the box and they'll just grab their box of chalks and away they go, and they weather it up and they stick it on the layout and everybody's all fat and happy until some idiot in a weathering clinic comes up and goes, okay, most of us are doing this wrong and here's why. And starts talking about the context of it. Why is it dirty there? How would it get dirty there? And how do you represent that? And for me, that was a huge eye-opening moment. And it's one of the reasons why I teach that a lot. It was something I went home and proceeded to re-weather, in some cases strip and repaint over 200 freight cars between my layout and my dad's, because I figured out they're all wrong, every last one of them. So it is the mental aspect of it that really is the biggest benefit of the bunch. You are going to learn new skill sets along the way. You are going to start working with materials that you've never worked with before. You may be a wood guy and you've never worked in styrene. Great. For me, the big change was not only styrene, but working with brass. I'd never built anything with brass before, just going out and buying raw brass pieces and start trying to put something together. But in working on a project, I went, okay, that's best suited out of brass. I need the strength of it. So I just went out, never even thought twice about it, never got nerved up about it or anything like that. Just went out and bought some brass and built the model. And looking back on that, I never would have made that decision prior to getting involved with the AP. Because it would have been one of those, I've never worked with it, and I'd have let myself get nervous about it and probably talked myself out of it and done it the project
Or taken a different route.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, to just go in a different direction. So that's the biggest thing of it, is the mental aspect of it that is going to change the way you look at our hobby. And I highly encourage everybody to get into it. Even if you don't go all the way to MMR, even if you just built a few cars and you built some structures and got involved in bits and pieces of it, that at least will further your craft. But taking the process to its conclusion and getting the certificates and getting your MMR, it is a lot of work. It is a lot of paperwork, but it furthers your hobby, and you're building stuff for your layout anyway. Why not take the next logical step and build it so that it's something that not everybody else has? It doesn't look like it did when it came out of the box, that kind of thing. So again, if you've got any questions, I'm always up here. Let me know, and I'd be happy to help you out.
Thanks, Dwayne.
You bet.
In case you guys haven't made the correlation yet, the AP program was set up by 3 Eagle Scouts who were model railroaders. And if you look at it, it's very much akin to a merit badge program in Boy Scouts. Okay? You're getting merit badges in certain areas, and ultimately you reach the rank of MMR, if you will, rather than Eagle Scout or whatever. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, well, and by golly, have we got a deal for you, David, okay? It's not a sash, but it's a vest, and this man has patches to go on the vest, if you so are inclined. Yeah, well, you brought it up, buddy, okay? You open the door.
A vest is not a sash.
Yeah, well, all right.
Well, get yourself a sash, and I'll be happy to hand you a badge to put on.
The scout office is right over here in Hurst, and we can get you a scout sash to put your AP patches on if you really want to go there.
I was thinking more of a brown sash.
Well, whatever, but here's the thing, okay? You don't have to get Eagle Scout, but you can still do the merit badges. You don't have to get your MMR, but you can still get the AP certs for the work you've done. All right? So you may not go all the way to MMR. In fact, I had a conversation with Tim Blackwell, the editor of Cowcatcher magazine, earlier this week. And I said, why haven't you turned in the paperwork for author? I mean, of all people, okay? And he goes, well, I just haven't. And I said, just fill out the paperwork. And I said, are you in front of your computer? He goes, yeah. I said, go to this location. And he printed off the SOQs right there. Okay. And I said, now I've talked to Dwayne, and in your situation, you need to get your author, you need 42 points, quote unquote, to get your author certificate. He's got probably 6,000 points, okay, based off of the work that he's done over the years of editing and publishing and articles and everything else. And I said, if you will just give us a synopsis rather than an individual listing of every article, that I've been the publisher of this magazine with this circulation for this many years and have published articles every month for the last whatever, then Dwayne will accept that and we can move forward. Okay? Oh, well, I can do that. See, that's the issue. Everybody goes, well, I just don't want to fill out the paperwork. Mr. Crumpton,
Yes, sir.
once you started filling out the paperwork, is it that hard?
It's not bad at all. It's just Mike is just getting started.
It is. It's exactly right.
It's just getting.
It's like that old Model T, just cranking it up. You know, once it's been running for a while, it doesn't take it hard to crank over again, right? Yes, sir.
In regards to paperwork, is there any place that people can go look to see samples of what other people have turned in?
There isn't, however, National's website is looking to revamp a lot of it, and I happen to know the guy that's doing it. So yeah, one of the things I've suggested that we do is throw some suggestions out there. Palmer just said send him an email. I'm sure he'll send you some of the things he's
I've
done.
got something. Dwayne's got
Yeah.
stuff, whatever.
It wasn't necessarily for me, it was just a general.
I was asking for a friend. Yeah, I got you.
I asked
Yeah, no, it's a good point because, you know, guys.
all my friends.
Yeah, guys will get to looking at, like, say, civil, for example, and
Yeah.
you've got to handle 3 different pieces of track work, and yet not everybody knows what all of those different types of pieces of track work are.
Well,
You know,
that's
and
good.
having an example of it there, and you know,
Yeah.
a photograph of what to go by,
Well, I
and
was just-
sample drawings and things like
Personally,
that.
I was looking at scenery.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little confusing. I should ask you, I will ask you that. But I mean, if there was a sample out there, a couple that I could look at and go, oh yeah, okay, now I know what
Yeah.
that means, right? And yes, I could get your,
Yeah.
And understand this.
I'll send you the write-up.
yeah, right.
I mean,
Well, I provided dispatcher debris for that ice tournament,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he could do his. So-
And let's talk about dispatcher for a minute. Mr. Tucker right here. Raise your hand, Mr. Tucker. Okay? Mr. Cowles, I need your help on this, please. Okay? Mr. Tucker came to me a while ago and he goes, when we had the old Texas Western, I used to operate all the time. I was a dispatcher. I've done this, that, and the other. Okay? But Mr. Corley's the one that's got the records. And it's all packed up and going to Georgia. Okay? Mr. Tucker would like to get somebody to sign off on the fact that he's operated. You're the only person that can witness that. Oh, did you already? Okay. No problem. It's been discussed and answered. Okay.
If there's a Benjamin involved, I bet you'd sign off.
Yeah. But perfect. Okay. That's excellent. Okay. Now, there's some drawings and documentation that you need to turn in with it. It's not just the hours. Okay. But have I got a deal for you? Because once somebody has drawn a drawing of the layout, okay, anybody can use that if you're a member of that club. So if Mr. Crumpton's got a drawing like that of a layout that you're a part of, you can use that drawing. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Okay, right? Okay, so there's ways to make the program work in your favor if you're a member of a club. All right, schematic drawings, drawings of track work, things like that. If it's been submitted already and been approved, then anybody can use that. Again, you don't have to recreate the wheel.
Can't you use any published track time? You don't have to do that.
There's
Any published track plan that was in Mount Railroad or something? Seems like I
I
remember.
don't think there's anything in there that was specifically says you can't,
Right,
but
but you just gotta get a schedule.
yeah, yeah.
The idea is to get a schedule that puts a drawing. Right?
Yeah, as long as, here's the kicker, you'd have to build part of it because you'd have to work on that layout. I'd have to double check that. I have to double check that. I know for civil and or electrical, or which, or maybe it's both, that you have to actually have that as part of what you build.
Yeah, but I thought,
But I
I
think,
thought the
in
dispatcher was off
dispatcher,
theoretically.
I think in dispatcher, you may have to have it on one that you did. I'll have to double check that.
That's the one you operate.
So, pardon me, allergies are killing me. So let me come back and circle back to Mr. Blackwell. He goes, but I don't want to work on my MMR. I don't want to do scratch building. And I said, that doesn't matter. You've already done the work. You can get the certificate. Well, I didn't know that you could get certificates by themselves without getting your MMR. Yes, Tim. See, there's a lot of misconceptions about this program out there floating in the ether that people just adopt. Okay.
I had a guy go, well, but my layout's finished. I don't want to build all this all over again. And I went, why do you think you have to build it all over again? It isn't a case of everything that I built from this stage going forward. It's anything you've built your entire life. When you were a member of the NMRA or not. Yeah. It's stuff you built in time. One of the very first locomotives I ever got judged, I built whenever I was like 20. And it merited. Way back then. Yeah. Yeah, 45 years ago. To answer your question,
Yeah, okay, go.
section B, number 1, paragraph 2. Normally this would be, it talks about doing a schematic drawing of the model railroad and whatever, right? Paragraph 2, normally this would be a diagram of one of the layouts that you put in your qualifying time on, dash, but there is no requirement that it must be. The drawing must be neat and readable, but does not have to be in ink.
So it doesn't have to be.
Then technically, yes, there's a track plan.
Any track one you could even just make it.
Now, so Mr. Blackwell is now, because he's got an in-scale layout, okay? He's going to get scenery, electrical, volunteer, and author based off the phone call where I was able to say, wait a minute, let's clear up some misconceptions here. So he's going to have 4 certificates out of the 11 just for turning in the paperwork.
I bet I can twist his arm and get the other 3.
Oh, I bet you can.
Here's another thing to consider, and we get a lot of this from the in-scale guys, is the scratch building part is hard. And it is. Scratch building and in-scale is a nightmare.
Nah.
Because it's hard to get enough parts and pieces for scratch building. Take cars, for example. We had to go to a precast frame that had all of the parts and pieces in it because nobody sells brake rigging for an in-scale car.
During the flat car clinic.
So there are some things that are limitations based on the scale that you pick. Now, just because you have an in-scale layout at home doesn't mean you can't build a car in HO and have that merit judged instead.
Or your track work.
You know, there's nothing that says, I mean, God bless him, Tom Browning, a great friend of mine over in Dallas, did all of his work in Z. Every inch of it in Z scale, including hand laying his track. And it was flawless. Absolutely flawless. One of 3 pieces, this was back when he had to score them, gave him 125 points, perfect score. We could not find anything else you could have done to it. Z scale, it's a crossover. So 2 switches facing each other, and we couldn't find, I mean, fish plates in Z scale. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
Does he still have his station hour?
I gave him his MMR plaque and a jacket with the really long sleeves that ties in the back. But no, Tom did a great bit of work. And the cool thing with what you would do is you go over to his house and, like, judging cars, for example, he had them all laid out for us to judge. And there'd be the one with the paperwork there for us to score. And behind it in a shoebox is anywhere from 25 to 40 different variations where he'd started. He'd get it so far and nope, and that's not correctable. He'd throw it in the box and he'd start over. And like he did a caboose. It's the one that sits down next to the depot down in West. And you could see over 36 different iterations of it and figuring out a way to work it in such a small scale to make it work. Now, in his case, he was really bent on getting it done in Z. That's one of the things he really wanted to get accomplished.
And by the way, his layout's gone now.
Yeah, sad to say. After he suffered a couple of mini strokes, it just wasn't feasible anymore.
Yeah, he got rid of his Z-scale layout.
But
And it was like as big as this area back in here.
it's an L-shaped, it's
Yeah.
a size layout.
In Z-scale.
So it's most of North Texas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm telling you.
yeah.
But again, I get the point that nobody necessarily wants to build something to be a shelter, and I get that. However, if you find that maybe in Tim's case, that maybe his problem is modeling, scratch building in something that's small,
And that's what we need to talk to him
has
about.
such a huge difficulty factor. Great, build it in HO and stick it on a shelf. And if somebody asks, well, why do you have that? Oh, I built that from scratch as part of my MMR process. You point at that and you point at the plaque on the wall, and they get it. So don't let the fact that you work in a scale that may have some limitations to it hold you back. You don't have to build it all in one scale or all on your layout. You can do work right here.
And that was going to be the next thing. Yeah.
You can come over here and talk to Daryl and David and say, look, I need to get my scenery certificate. Can we measure off 32 square feet of that layout up there and let me do the scenery on it? I'll use your colors. We'll do your deal. If you want to work with I'll work with the crew, and that way I can get how they do their process so it looks cohesive to the rest of the layout. But I'd really like to get my scenery, and I don't have 32 square feet at home to do it.
Sounds familiar, Mr. Lysing?
I'm pretty sure the guys will go, yep, come on up here. Let's figure out where you can work. And they'll put you to work on it because they'd probably like to have the help. And it'll be a two birds, one stone kind of thing. So take advantage of the opportunities where you've got them. If you've got a friend who's got a really big layout and needs some help doing scenery, you can talk to your buddies about coming over and they can get their scenery out of the way and you get your layout finished. So
Mr. Palmer got his scenery certificate on my layout. Yep. Mr. Lysing started doing the same thing yesterday.
Okay. And, the same goes for operations. If you need some operations time, come up here and run a train. Get with Mike. Go over to his house on an operating session. Run a train. You want to learn how to dispatch? Get with Mike. He'll teach you how to dispatch his layout.
And that's what Mr. Kirkpatrick, Trapper. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Hold on, him at the perfect time.
Yeah, hit him at the perfect time. Daryl, what's your question?
Not exactly the same, but is on judging rescale on these cars and stuff, do you use magnifying glasses and things?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Absolutely.
No,
And
I don't know if it had to be,
And in fact, okay, not just Z-scale. Whenever we were in the contest room at Tulsa, I had a magnifying glass to look at HO scale stuff.
Now, and I don't want to
use one too.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that to intimidate anybody. I mean, somebody was like, oh my God, they're going to put it literally under the microscope. In some cases you have to, because I don't know about y'all, but I'm on trifocals already. So sometimes seeing some of that smaller detail. And we don't approach it from I'm going to whip out the magnifying glass and I'm going to find every last thing you got wrong. It's I want to whip out the magnifying glass so I can see all the detail you put on this so that you get the credit you deserve.
Bingo.
Instead of me missing it and going, well, if you just put the NBWs on it, you'd been fine. And then they get this, why did I lose points for this? There's NBWs all over that. Oh, are there? And by that point, it's,
And he brings that up because that's what somebody put on my judging sheet. Mm-hmm. And the MBWs were there. Yep. They just couldn't see them. That's not my fault. Okay? They were there.
Yeah. So it's every time you get something evaluated, we are looking for what all did you do right. I mean, that's always been the mantra I teach my judges. Look for what they did right. And it's when you get down to the point where you're looking it over and everything looks right, then you can switch gears and start hunting for things where they've dropped the ball. And I always want to try this to be an approach from the positive whenever we can. When we do a evaluation here at the club, for example, you're going to be present and you're going to be up here watching us do what we do. And I'm fine with that. And I encourage it because we can sit down and go, okay, you brought us your flat car. Why did you do this? Well, I did this because of this, and I did this because of that, and I did this because you told me to, and whatever else the case may be. But I may flip the thing over and start looking at it and go, okay, now I know I didn't teach you to put that there. Where did you come up with that idea? Well, I found a photograph, and it shows that this is the way those were mounted. Perfect. Now that helps you get extra points, you know. There are things that you can do in an evaluation here that you won't get that advantage at a LSR convention or at a national convention because those judgings are done anonymously. So you're not in the room, the doors are closed, the models are out on the tables, and the crews are going through and they're doing their evaluations. So the only feedback you get is hopefully that judging crew, and they're supposed to, flips the thing over and writes you some notes on where you lost points. And maybe a few notes on if they found something that you did that they thought was really cool. Unfortunately, when you've got a room with 100+ models in it, sometimes those notes are pretty small. Needs this, needs X, and that's all you get. They didn't have time to write, I thought your rust was the best I've ever seen. This was really nice. I like this detail. You know, the guy hanging out the window was kind of cool. Who was holding the cycles to keep him from falling? You know, that kind of thing. We don't have time for that. It's a get in, get it done, get it over with, because a lot of times we'll start at 6 or 7 o'clock and we get out of the room at 2 or 3 in the morning sometimes. Just depends on how much work there is to do. So you'll find some critiques in there, and hopefully they do a good job of giving you some notes so you have some constructive feedback, but getting it here, we can give you all the feedback you want.
Another thing, rolling stock, for example, we have to build 12 cars, and there have to be so many scratch builds. They don't have to be 12 different cars. You can get your plans out, or draw up your plans to scratch build and build a half a dozen.
You have to have 4 car types, but yes, you can have multiples of the same car.
And you can mass produce your scratch build.
Yep.
And build several cars from exactly the same plan.
Yep. And cars where you need a string of hopper cars or a string of tank cars or a string of something, you know, that, you know, being able to go through and mass produce them works out really well. And the flip side of that is super detailing a string of AccuRails or something like that, where you can go through and strip off the car numbers, or you buy them data only. You add your own heralds, you add your own dimensional data, you know, your own car numbers and things like that. You go through and you start adding, you know, etched roof walks and brake rigging and all the other things into super detailed. You know, you can mass produce a lot of things like that, and it will help you because you're especially if it's something where you're setting up a jig to work. That's one of the things that I took from my modeling into my woodworking. Set up a jig, make several of them, and you learn that workflow process. If I set this jig up, I can do this for all 4 of these, and I'll get that part done. And then I set up another jig to do the same thing, and I'll do that 4 times, and I'll work on them that way. So I do that a lot when I'm building. If I've got a case where I'm building several bookcases or something like that, or I'm building multiple harps, if I set a jig up, I make all my cuts for everything I'm going to build, and then I set the next jig up. And while I've got the machines set up, I do everything at once. Same process here. It's all about workflow. And again, that's something you learn as part of the process. Now, whether you learn it on your own or you learn it as part of the AP, if you pick it up, you pick it up, and it makes no difference. But it's little things like that that you will pick up along the way, guaranteed, as you're working along the achievement program. And it's these, you know, I need it jigged so I can hold this perfectly square while it's drying, okay? But now you have to stop. It's a little bitty jig. Make a second jig. Now you can do this half of the car, and you can do that half of the car, and they can both be over there drying while you start working on cutting deck boards. And then once you come out of the jig, you can put the next car in it, let that be drying, and you continue to cut deck boards. Or you continue to work cutting out the sides or the ends or whatever the case may be for whatever you're building. So there's a lot of plotting and planning that goes into a project. And if you're working on the achievement program, there are things that you can do that if you really want to approach it like you would a project at work, when you think about it from a project management perspective, I have to reach all 12 of these milestones to reach cars. And then I have all 8 of these I have to reach to get that. And I have to scratch build 3 pieces of track to get this. And you lay them out in that aspect. Then you start thinking about, okay, I've got to do 32 square feet of scenery since I'm an HO. All right, so what can I put in that 32 square feet besides the scenery? Well, I could put this town in. Well, okay, what's the town in? Well, the town has a yard. Can I put my 3 pieces of scratch built track work in that yard? Yeah. Okay, so you lay it out so you can put those 3 pieces in it. Now you're looking at civil and scenery. Now, does that 32 square feet happen to match a prototype scene? Well, yeah, it's Rico, Colorado on the Rio Grande Southern. Okay, great. Now it's prototype model of scenery and civil. Well, by the time I wire all this up, I'll have those same 3 pieces of track work that I hand laid. I'll wire them. Now it's electrical. Then you put all the buildings in it. Now it's structures. You build your cars. Now it's cars. You're 6 out of the 7 on one project.
Write an article about
One
it.
4-foot by 8-foot piece of plywood, and you're at 6 out of 7 towards MMR. Write articles about it, send it to the Marker Land, build you a website and put stuff out there on that. Get it published. Riley, I guarantee you, if you send him something for the Marker Lamp, if it's halfway written decently and has some good pictures, it's going to end up in the Marker Lamp. Send them to National. If you've got really good photographs and you can write it up a really good article, send it to National because you earn more points for that per page. Get it published, work on author, and you go from nothing to MMR on one project.
Hey, Dwayne,
Sir.
don't forget, while you're in the process of doing all that, get your golden spike too.
Oh, you bet. Once you're an MMR, you no longer
Good
qualify
point,
for
Mossy.
Golden Spike. Because they figure you already know it. And Golden Spike, kind of think of Golden Spike as the gateway drug.
Hey,
It's, you know.
look what Gordy put.
Yeah, we're going to make the comment, scratch building and N-scale is just a bigger opportunity to impress. And yes, it is. And again, Z-scale even more so. And I told you that story because we were seriously that impressed. I mean, the work was that well done. And I've seen guys that can scratch build an N, and it's an amazing feat of work. And it is. It does have its challenges, but here's the flip side of that. O-scale has its own challenges too. And you would think, well, it's bigger. It'd be easier to work on. Not necessarily, because there's an awful lot of detail that you can't see in N-scale that you don't model, that they have to because you can see it. You know, the old standing joke is the metal milk cans that used to sit out on the railroad and come by and pick them up. In Z-scale, that's a styrene rod painted silver. In N-scale, it's still not much better than a styrene rod painted silver. It just happens to have a little bit of shape to it. In HO, it kind of looks like one, and the lid might have a little bit of detail. In S, that lid really has detail and might even come off. In O, it probably has milk in it. Okay?
Yeah.
There's all these details that you have to start adding the bigger you go up in your scales. So every scale has its own challenges. The question gets around, you know, is it something feasible that you can do, that you can build something that will score?
I'd like to jump in here, and this is still part of the AP report, okay? Our great friend, Dr. Michael Ross, this past month, finished off his MMR. So round of applause for Miss, yeah, that's fine, yes.
We submitted his paperwork to National with this month's batch, so.
And
As always, my deadline to National is the 20th, so your deadline to me is the 19th. If you've got something that you're really pushing to get it finished, and you say, look, I may be the 20th before I can get it to you, call me up and let me know, because I can always send it in after the fact. It's not like it's all got to be in one email to him, but the earlier you can get it to me, the better. So.
Dr. Ross has been a member of the NMRA through multiple divisions. Get this, okay? He's got a 50-year certificate as a member of the NMRA from 2000. Okay? So I'll let you do the math on what it is now. Okay? He didn't start working on the AP program until we started promoting it in the Division 1. And that's 5 years ago. He never worked on it until then. Isn't that right, Dr. Walter?
What he said, yes.
So he's gotten it all finished and done. He's got a beautiful layout. But to Dwayne's point about O-scale, he models in O-scale, 2-rail O-scale, and his last, to finish it off, was a scratch-built flat car in O-scale with working brakes. You turned the brake wheel and the chain tightened up and the shoes came down around the wheels. Go figure. Okay? So what Dwayne's talking about the milk can with the milk in it, yeah, O-scale with working brakes. And Jeff and I went over and judged it, and I was very delighted to be able to sign off on his paperwork and get that accomplished for him. So he's on a trip today down to San Antonio, I believe, either Austin or San Antonio, one or the other, but he'll be back next month. And he'll be at the Christmas party, which, unless you have anything else you want to add on that. Let me move on along through our announcements. This weekend is the Dfw Interchange. Some of you may be participating in that and having your layout in operations for the Dfw Interchange. And for those of you not aware of, or informed on what that is, Houston, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Tulsa have a round robin where if you have an operating layout that is set up for switching cars and are registered with your local group, then you're part of the interchange. And so every third year, you can host people coming to your layout for operations, okay? There was a limited number of people who came into DFW this weekend, so they didn't use all the layouts that are signed up for the registered on the exchange here in DFW. Mine is one of them. David Grimes is one of them, okay? But there are other layouts around where people are operating even as we speak this morning. But if you're part of that, then you get invited to the operation sessions in Houston and Tulsa. And Tulsa, for those of you who went up there and saw some of the layouts up there, they've got some beautiful layouts in Tulsa. Okay. Houston's got great layouts also. How many of you would die to be able to operate on Gil Freitag's Stony Creek and Western? Okay. If you're part of the interchange, you get to do that. I've done it twice. That layout is legendary. It's in the same category as John Allen's layout. Okay. People around the world know the Stony Creek and Western, and I've had the good fortune of being able to operate on it twice. I've never done it and you got it once, Barry? Yeah. And you don't get that opportunity unless you're a member of the NMRA. It just doesn't happen. Okay. So there's another reason to join the NMRA if you needed one. But anyway, the interchange is going on this weekend here in Dallas-Fort Worth. I would like to invite you, if you have someone that you know from a membership standpoint that is under the age of 18, that you think would be a good candidate for the Youth Award for Division 1, please submit their name to me by email. Okay? We are looking to be able to pass out memberships sponsored by the region for Youth Award. So if you know somebody under the age of 18 who has an interest in trains and is not a member of the NMRA, please let me know, and I will accept a small resume for them and submit them to the youth chairman of the region and have them considered for the Youth Award. On that same vein, sorry?
No. Along that same line, there was a donation made. To
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to say.
Being that it was right around Veterans Day, if you know a vet who
I think there's two left.
That has an interest in model railroading but isn't a member of the NMRA, pass that along as well.
There is a endowment that was given to the Lone Star region by an anonymous member of the Southeast region who is sponsoring veterans who are not members of the NMRA to be a member of the NMRA. So if you know a vet, just like Dwayne says, you know a vet, any branch that has served and would like to be have a membership bequeathed to them, then we can do that. December the 11th. Some of you were nice enough to send me a correction notice that I got the date wrong on today's meeting. Several of you, it was a test to see if you were actually reading the email I sent you. The date I put in there was actually, I was picking it up from the Christmas party date, which is the 11th of December. Mark your calendar. Please make plans to attend. Trapper, would you please step forward a second, please? Yeah, that's fine. Trapper is organizing the potluck dinner. Can you give us some details on that, Trapper? Tell them what to do and how to do it.
Trapper. Yes. We put a this is the first time I've ever done it, so I'm kind of caught off guard.
Trapper.
Get up here. Oh, get up here. So
It's
people
cameras.
can hear you. I don't want to. Okay. Too bad.
And cameras and microphones. There you go.
Okay.
That's good enough right there.
I did a potluck scheduling on the internet.
Perfect potluck.
Perfect potluck. We sent it out as an email to everybody with help of him of the email. Looks very cool, does it not? The people have seen it. And you put in, you open up that the site where the potluck is, and you go in there and you put your name down and tell us what you're going to be bringing, from appetizers to silverware, stuff like that. We're providing the turkey and the ham and
The division is.
Yeah, the division. And the tea, unsweetened and sweetened. So we got several things on top of there, and so we need y'all to fill out that when you can, so I can keep a record of that.
So the email's gone out already?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Went out last week.
News.
News@cowcatcherdivision.org. I received it. Barry said he received it. David Grind received it. Zink and everybody that's raising their hand has all seen it. Okay, so
We did
check
a
your
test-
email again.
Yeah, we did a test run. So,
Yeah, we did a test run. Okay.
so
Steele said he's received his.
I did the dessert part and it appeared to work.
Perfect. Thank you.
it makes me feel good because it's the first time I ever done it. So thanks. Appreciate it.
All right.
What extra skills now?
Now then, in addition to that, you want to bring a gift, wrapped gift, $25 value or up. I will give you my secret.
25 or up?
Go to Hobby Lobby, and they've got their Christmas stuff on sale already at 50% off. Okay? So you can get a $50 gift for $25. $25 and up. There's your answer. Okay? So you can get a really nice gift for the same price as everybody else, and you can bring it, wrap it, and give it. It doesn't matter whether it's for male or female. Here's why. Okay? When you bring your spouse or significant other, then the gift exchange starts getting very creative, because somebody finds a gift that they want, and we do the Chinese Christmas thing where you can steal it from somebody twice, and the third time it's in possession of somebody, it's dead and you can't do it anymore. You can't steal it. So people start getting creative as to who's going to steal what from who to get the prize that they really want, and it's a lot of fun. Okay? But it doesn't matter whether you bring it for a male or female, a generic gift, whatever, because if it's nice and somebody wants it, they're going to figure out a way to take it home with them. Yeah, David?
Mike, is this one gift per couple?
No, per person.
Each person?
Per person. Per person, yes. Okay?
I guess I'll leave her at home then.
Well, there, yeah. Do what you got to do, you know. You're the one that has to go back after the party. We also have a number of door prizes. A sampling of which is tickets to Durango and Rio Grande, or Durango and Silverton Railroad. Tickets coming from Cumbres and Toltec if they respond like I think they will. Tickets from Grapevine Historic Railroad. Gift certificates from hobby shops. Winfield Prints, things like that. So there are really nice door prizes. I think you'll enjoy it if you come. Those of you who've been there before, it's an event you don't want to miss, correct?
Yep.
All right, cool. And anybody's invited, kids included. Bring them on. The leadership dinner for the leaders of the division. We do that annually as a thank you. Will be held at Spring Creek Barbecue. Not Spring Creek, Shady Oaks Barbecue over in the Fossil Creek area of Fort Worth. That's those people are invited, and it will be the second or third Thursday of January. I have to look at the calendar. I don't have it in front of me right now. Anybody have any questions or anything that we need to announce real quick? Did anybody bring anything for show and tell?
I have a question.
Sure.
I acquired a Bearcat scanner. If anybody knows how to program this thing, after the meeting, I sure love about 3 minutes of your time. Oh, I have this. It's like, this is really cool. I don't know what to do with it. So if you understand this, I would love to talk to you.
See me after the meeting. See me after the meeting.
Yeah. After.
I will help you.
Oh. This is the guy that comes to my house and looks at the stuff and he says, will you just fill out the paperwork for the achievement program?
It is what it is, you know. All right. So everybody pull out your tickets. We're going to do deal or dud real quick. Trapper. Thank you.
And 32 people.
32 here.
Yes.
And how many online?
8.
So 40 people. Another good attendance, guys. Considering our membership is 167, 170 people, we're getting what? 25% in attendance on a Saturday. It's not bad, guys. And a lot of these folks live a whole lot, a very significant drive away from Fort Worth and Tarrant and Collin counties. So,
Especially Gordon.
yeah, especially Gordy. Yeah. All right. First ticket number.
Yes, you'll get your feet wet coming here.
024. 024. There he is.
First time.
Cool. Which number do you want? 1, 2, or 3? What? You don't get to touch it first.
It's too late for that.
All right. Oh, man. Milk duds. And a $15 gift certificate, Discount Model Trains. Oh, you need to pull a ticket. There you go. $018. There he is. Come on up. Number 1 or number 2? Number 1. Uh-oh. Milk duds.
All right.
And a $10 gift certificate, Discount Model Trains. All right. And another ticket full.
That old box of milk duds, trying to get rid of them all, huh?
019. All right. You can have number 2 or number 2.
I'll take number 2.
Number 2, that's good. Uh-oh, what is that? Oh, you got M&Ms. All right. And a $5 gift certificate, Discount Model Trains. All right.
The best of the desserts, but not the best served. Oh well.
We had a lot of folks on behalf of the division bring milk duds. I've got a whole bunch of these left over from Halloween candy, I'm betting.
You got it.
And And then Mr. Cranda brought Milk Duds because they sell them in their vending machine at his office. So he make sure we had Milk Duds. And then our illustrious ops team, who supplies us with our refreshments, brought M&Ms. So thank you for them. I appreciate the work that they do and giving you refreshments every week. Thank you. Also, be sure and feed the kitty back in the back.
Please.
Your donations to the refreshment fund are always appreciated. The Cokes and donuts and everything, it certainly offsets the cost of those, so we really appreciate it. We're going to take a short break and then come back to two great clinics by two very good clinicians that are going to be joining us online. Let's take a 5-minute break.
Hey, real quick,
What?
before we go, just a quick show of hands out of curiosity, since Veterans Day was just the other day. How many folks we got here who are vets? Okay.
Veterans.
Yeah.
Raise your hand, Stu. Thank you. Thank you for your service.
You bet.
Thank you for keeping our country free so that we can do things like this. Thank you very much. All right, 5-minute break. We're coming back at 11:06. Oh, do you want to introduce these people? Okay. Main screen up, please. All right. Guys, I've made the acquaintance of this next clinician through Zoom. We've never been in the same room together other than virtually. One of the things that COVID-19 gave us was the opportunity to expand our friendships across state lines and across and around the globe. Last night, I had dinner with a brand new friend that I met through Dwayne, who was passing through town, and he and his wife and I had dinner last night. And it was the first time we sat down, but we were old friends, even though we'd never seen each other in the same room together. It was a wonderful experience. I feel the same way about our next clinician. He's a MMR, recently accomplished his MMR within the last 60 days. He's also a retired Amtrak engineer. So he's got great stories of things that happened in and around when he was, not engineer, conductor, excuse me. He's got great stories of when he worked on the railroad. But today he's going to be giving us a clinic all about signs along the right of way that we sometimes and most often do not put on our railroad, which are very significant for the operation of any one-to-one scale railroad. They've got to have signage. They've got to know and tell the crews what to do and when to do it. So without further ado, please welcome from the Phoenix or Tucson area, I'm not sure which, but he'll correct me in a minute, Paul Buhrke, MMR. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I want Milk Duds.
You want?
That's not fair.
On your next trip over, we'll have you some.
I expect them in the mail. Don't send them Amtrak; they'll never get here.
Busy hitting cars across.
They keep hitting cars at the crossings, don't they?
Yeah, well, it's hard when they don't follow signs.
Isn't that? There you go.
Yeah,
Great
there you go.
lead in.
All right. Thank you, guys. As Mike had said, basically he spilled the guts on all the qualifications. I hired out on freight 1980 for Seaboard Coastline. Anybody remember that wonderful railroad?
Mm-hmm.
Way back when, before it turned into Can Someone Explain or CSX. So I worked there for 9 years.
I love it.
Yeah, I worked there for 9 years. Then I took a sidetrack to Amtrak when they called us up and took the crews over. And briefly, I was hanging on the side of a boxcar in a rubber rain suit in a North Carolina rainstorm about 2 a.m. And the southbound meter went by, and I said to myself, can you see myself working freight at 38? Yeah. 48? Yeah, okay. 58, hello Amtrak. So that was it. And then along with my Amtrak career, I worked in North Carolina. That brought the RF&P right-of-way signs in. I did a seniority move to New York State, and that was the old vaunted New York Central main line out of Albany, New York. The Delaware and Hudson I was worked up on. I worked into Canada. Was qualified all the way over to Cleveland. Divorce happened when I was in New York, and I moved to California. And that brought the old SP signs in the UP over Donner Summit. So I guess I'm a boomer, if you want to call it as such. So the idea here is road signs, and I presume everybody drives a car. You just don't jump in your car and go, do you? You got to pay attention. Speed signs, bear crossings, highways, the road you're on, all that good stuff. And you even get that nasty railroad crossing sign that you have to pay attention to. So here's the converse of it.
People don't. That some people don't.
Yeah. Here's the converse side. This is what we see on the railroad, whether you're an engineer or a conductor or a brakeman, anybody working on the right of way, you need to know these signs just because, not just because, but if I'm backing a train up, I've got to know where I'm going, what I've got to do. And if you're up on the head end, you've got to help him navigate sometimes. That's what we go up there for. So Mike, did they get handouts, or how we want to do handouts? Any
There
idea?
will be Paul sent us a brochure, and by the way, Dave Steckler, Dave, raise your hand. He has stepped up to volunteer to help us with our website. So thank you, Dave, for that. Number one. Number two, we've got a handout that soon will be posted on our website for you to be able to download accordingly. All right. So right now it's not available, but it will be shortly. So
all right, let's see
everything that Paul is referencing will be available to you, and I will send out an email to let you know when. Okay. Does that work for you, Paul?
All right. Yeah, that's fine, Mike. That's fine. I can throw them up real quick so that everybody gets a sort of idea. And then what I'll do is I'll go through I've got this broken down into my qualifications such as they are. Telephone poles, believe it or not, are the key item here. The uniformity of signage, etc. And then the practical usage, I took a bunch of pictures off of my railroad, and I'll just spin through them and show you what they look like in the field and what you're supposed to be doing. And then it's wrap up, throw lettuce, tomato. Fortunately, I'm here in Tucson, so you won't be able to. So anyway, in my inestimable or estimated opinion, the telephone pole, believe it or not, is the most important thing when it comes to signage. Now you're wondering, why is he talking telephone poles? I'm not talking the amount of wires on it, the insulation, the colors, the height, etc. I don't know of any branch line or main line that did not have a telegraph pole line on it. When I came in 1980, even though we had branch lines, you could still see where the poles were. They were there for communication. Go back 100, 150 years, they communicated by telegraph. We all know that. That's not that big of a deal, but it's a forgotten art. But there was communication with telephone poles. Anybody offhand know how telephone poles were spaced?
33 of the mile.
Well, okay.
33.
Some had 33. The most of the railroads I was referred to was 40. And it was 40 for a reason. 10 poles was a quarter mile, 20 poles was a half a mile, 30 was 3/4, and 40 poles, 40, sorry, new teeth. 40 poles to the mile was a milepost. Now, this is going to be an interesting tidbit. With 40 poles to the mile, that gives you an idea how many posts do you want to work? I use a foot on my railroad because if you break it down and do like 1 second for the foot, that's 60 miles an hour in HO. And the formula was out there, and I've been using it for years. So if you do your speed, you work accordingly, you can judge how many foam poles you're at. And why is this foam pole important? In my opinion, if you take a foam pole, start at any one of your foam poles, once you've got them set up to what spacing you want to use, blow your whistle, do a grade crossing, do several of them at what you think is the normal speed you're going to run your railroad. That would be the key in inches, roughly where you want to start placing a lot of your signs. I work in HON3, and of course we run a lot slower railroad. My pole spacing is a foot, but my general spacing is 18 inches. You can get a good road crossing. You can do most of the whistle work you need to in that 18-inch spot. I would say if you're doing HO, maybe go 2 feet. That's just a ballpark. You're going to have to decide yourself, but it's all keyed on your poles. Because when you start counting, instead of pulling out your tape measure, just start counting poles. And let me throw this one screen share up. That is there's two on the handout. There's two things. Denver and Rio Grande from the 1900s, and I model in HON3, so these are all Denver and Rio Grande signs. And I did pull some Rock Island signs from 1969, one of the timetables I had. So unfortunately, I'll have to go right with the pictures because that's all I can get to work. All right, what we're looking at is Curricani. That is a station sign. Station signs tell you a specific location if there's not an actual station, a depot there, building per se. A station is listed as a place in a timetable, and it has to be designated as such, and this would be the designator for Curricani. And in the Rio Grande's case, it was opposite side of where the station building would have been located. And down there, it's a big cliff, so they put it on that side. The next one down the road is it's my section house. Let me just see if I can move this. There. That is a milepost. I have a little bit better ones, but mileposts, of course, are those very important. Where are I on this railroad? There's a D and a 323. In this case, some mileposts would be marked from the terminal, the home office of the railroad. Some would just have a milepost. Some are some might be from another division post. For instance, up in New York, all our mileposts to Buffalo were from New York City. Once we got out of Buffalo, we started over again from milepost 1 after we'd hit the division points.
What does the D stand for?
In this case, it's milepost from Denver.
Okay.
And the milepost reads reads the same on the other side, D323. Now, in the Rio Grande, they were on the engineer side going towards Denver was the standard placement. This is another kick. There are standard placements, but when you get to an operational situation, they can be put anywhere they want to, left or right side, it doesn't matter. The idea is that it's out there. Your job is to remember where it's at when you're qualified. So next picture would be a slow sign. Isn't that a novel concept? That is piece of slow track. That is a permanent slow sign, as opposed to
a yellow board.
Yeah, yellow board, or what we call on CSX firecrackers, the yellow board with the orange stripe on it. Mm-hmm. On the Rio Grande, they had just the word slow. So the corollary to this is, generally speaking, the placement for a permanent slow order is a certain amount of feet from the actual slow spot. In my case, it's right at the beginning where I want you to slow down. I'm not going to get that picky.
Paul, can I interject here for just
Yeah.
a second? For those of you who do not know what a yellow board is and haven't worked on a railroad before, periodically, the track gang will go out and do maintenance on a particular set of track or set a location or distance of track while the railroad is still operational. So what they do is they go out there and they've got basically a 2-foot square that's painted yellow, and they'll put it down a distance in front of where they're doing the maintenance. They'll stick it in the right of way, and when the engineer approaches it, he knows he needs to slow down there. Then a distance beyond that, beyond where they're working on the railroad, they will put a green board, which means that it is okay for him to resume speed after the train has cleared the entire section of the maintenance and the caboose or trail end car passes the green board. Then he can resume speed away from the maintenance area. Okay, so those are yellow boards and green boards, and you can put those as an operations trick, quote unquote, or feature on your railroad in modern times for a particular operating session. Put them on a pin and stick them somewhere on your railroad, and now your railroad takes on a different personality than it would otherwise, because you can put them in or take them out as you wish. Okay, but that's the definition of a yellow board and a green board. I'm sorry, Paul, but
No, that's fine. Thanks, Mike. On the downloads, handouts, whatever you want to call them, yellow boards and green boards and a temporary speed restriction chart are on the list. And they're pretty much self-explanatory. It's gives you how to use it and what you want to do. This is the backside of the other slow board. Rio Grande did not use a proceed board, but as again, if you're qualified on the railroad, you know that's the other side, that's the other slow board. You go by that, away you go, all whopping maybe 20 miles an hour. So there you go. This one I took, this is a whistle post. The Rio Grande used whistle posts with a W. That meant you had to blow, in this case, for the most part, it's the grade crossing signal. And they did in this case because you're going into a trestle. They always wanted you to blow for a trestle in case somebody was on it, whether they were supposed to be or not. So they know. Now, if you look, if I could back up, you see that tree right there? It's behind the tree. Why is it behind the tree? It's the standard length distance from the bridge, but why is it behind the tree? Well, when they put the post in years ago, the tree wasn't there. It was just a sapling. Things never get moved. Signs can be in the strangest place, but that's why the sign was there long before the tree grew. Now, this is part of my unscenic area, but here's another whistle post going into another trestle. And then here's the station board for Crystal Creek. Same thing. And this, we're running into the canyon, so I had to, actually, it's at the end of the siding. That is a prototypical spot off of that one particular area. It was right there. It's not going to stop a car, but mine will. It's got a little piece of wire in the back of it in case you run off the end of the world. So,
Hey, Paul,
yeah.
your whistle signs, are they always on the engineer's side?
They
direction?
They are supposed to be, but they can be on the other side if there's not room for them.
Okay.
The railroad tried to get them on the right side. It's hard to look. Whistle posts are one of those federally regulated items on the railroad. At one time, they could be so many feet. Now, the last time I worked, which was 2013, they had changed it to if you're going line speed, you have to blow the whistle so many seconds for the road crossing. So whistle posts have been adjusted accordingly. But generally speaking, they were X amount of distance all the way around. So it's check your own railroad and see what they're doing. But if you're going back in the old days, this goes back to pick your standard, what you think is a good measurement, and use that for everybody. And eventually, if you're going to use your sound, and if you do have sound in your locomotives, try to get the guys to blow for a road crossing. And as a side note, I have a friend who's got a layout. The boys were on him for putting sound in his locomotives. And he says, why did I do this? I have one grade crossing and I can't even get him to blow for the grade crossing. Oh, pick your poison, boys. Pick your poison. And then the group I operate with, they always ask me, why are you making so much noise? It's because I'm going over road crossings. I'm going through towns. I work there. We make noise. We don't want to hit somebody. So there you go. This is looking into my town of Cimarron. That there's two boards here. One is an S board. This brings up an interesting tidbit. The S board stands for station, but the two railroad examples I used, it is not for the station building itself. It's the first switch where you can hide out if you have to clear up on the main line, like get out of the way of another train. So in this case, it's in the siding where the tank cars are. Okay, we're going to have a problem there, but you get the idea. And then there is my yard limit sign. A yard limit sign is, it's a movable sign. It can be anywhere you want to put it. But there's two things I'd like to say about a yard limit. It is a method of an operation. It is a method of operation. Generally speaking, it says, unless you're a first-class train, you go through yard limits at restricted speed. No one is the only train that has any rights is a first-class train. Second class extra trains, third class, fourth class, whatever you want to call them, you can go through there, but you have to look out for anything and everything and everybody. Basically, if you've got a yard job switching there, you look out for him. He can be out there in front of you, and he's supposed to give way, but it's a method of operation, and that's what they keep stressing us. Anybody can use the piece of railroad. Now, the other thing I'd like to say is, if anybody's got yard limit signs on their railroad, please turn them so they face out of the yard limits. I don't know how many guys I've seen that have them, they have them facing in. If you're in yard limits, you already know that. You want the guys coming in from out of town to know they're by your yard limit board. So just a little personal prejudice there. Now, here's another milepost, and what I wanted to show, you see this white board up here on top of the phone pole? On the Rio Grande, they use that as a milepost. That would designate that that's an actual milepost. And on the Rio Grande mileposts, in those signs, they had rail racks. So every place you saw a white board or even milepost, they had a rail rack. Not piece of signage, but that's something you could add as a detail that most guys don't do. Some railroads did. They have rail racks. Rail racks, of course, obviously to hold a piece of rail if you got a broken rail. You don't want to be carrying one of these things around for 20 miles. So they stashed them out in the woods. This I took for those infamous railway crossing signs that hopefully that mail truck is going to stop at least to pay attention. On the Rio Grande, there were it was a 10, and this floored me. It was 10 feet wide and 10 feet tall on 1x4s or 1x6s, depending on how you look at it. So when I put it up, that's actual scale size, and it's huge. It's actually huge, but that's scale height and scale width. There's the X board. On the Rio Grande, they used X for a road crossing, which if it's a road crossing, then you did blow 14L or your road crossing sign. Coming down the hill into the other end of Cimarron, you've got a yard limit board. You got the S board for the switch at the Y where you can get off the main line. And this is the X board for that road crossing in the background. So you got 3 of them in a row. I would say properly spaced. The yard limit board was just enough to clear what we needed to clear. Going up my hill, I've got the slow board. That's the start of the 3%. There's the whistle post for my tunnel, because you did have to blow the whistle for a tunnel. These are coming up into Cerro Summit. There is a very small road crossing, and there's the yard limit board for Cerro Summit. Up at Cerro Summit, there is another milepost. You have the obligatory whiteboard, and there's the rail rest in the front. This is coming back the other way. S board into the siding, and then the yard limit board for the actual working area. This is just looking back over my trestle. That's the slow board where the slow starts. This is getting into, this is Cedar Creek. We have the X board for a road crossing and S board for the siding, section houses, and their yard limit boards right off the front porch of the section house. That's just where it had to be. This is my interesting crossing here. It's a stop board. And on the railroad, when you see a stop board, of course, it's like a stop sign. I've seen them in red lately. They can be yellow. They can be white on black. It's a stop board, like a smash board in this case. That's an actual movable grade crossing. So when you want to use, this is my Ori branch. This is my branch to the turntable, my lead. So if you want to use it, you got to move it over. So it's an actual movable piece of. Now, here's where gets interesting. This is Ori Junction. That is an actual spot on my railroad. It's also got the yard limit sign under it. Now, this is where you can get very creative. That is stuffed right in the middle of a turnout. Where do the yard limits start? Right down here at the clear point of the track you're coming in on. By rules, you could put the board anywhere, but if you follow that switch, you've done a boo-boo unless you've not had permission. You never go over a switch unless you've got permission to go over it. And what I'm trying to say is it's the clearance point. So if you're coming in off the branch line on the right to get into the yard limits, you're still on the Ori branch. But once you go past that clear point, you're in the yard limits. Coming out the other way, when you come out of and you're over the turnout, then you're through the clearance points. You just, like I say, you put them anywhere you want to, but it's just a matter of knowing where you're in the clear. Then this is my last favorite sign is end of third rail, because that's where my third rail runs out of Montrose. My yard at Montrose is dual gauged, and so they have to be told. That's where you would see that infamous end of third rail sign. The other thing need to add about all these signs, they're not clean. They have bushes, grass, and everything growing around on them. As long as you can see the top part, nobody really cares about the bottom part. Okay, so don't be afraid to trash them up a bit. Makes them look like they've been there forever. Now, did anybody notice the dots in the right of way? I did a little bit of addition here. You see that yellow and you see the yellow and red, they're pinheads, map pin. That helps my guys to see which way the turnouts are lined. Green is normal, red is reversed. And when that's on the main track. When you're in the yard, that one is actually yellow and that one is white. Up the other way around. This is the white one, that's the yellow one, I'm sorry. I picked at it from the club in Enid, Oklahoma. And when you put them in, they're actually inconspicuous unless you're really looking at it, but it helps people understand which way I'm going. And if I mess with this turnout, am I going to be in the yard, or am I going to stay? Am I going to the main track, or I'm going to stay on the track I'm on? So if you're not really looking, you probably won't notice them, but my guys know where to look for them. So there's a sign that I've invented that it's appreciative, let's put it that way. And that little gem is a red fusee. Did anybody see that article in Model Railroader last month about the guy with the permanent fusee? I'd like to see about a 16-foot long fusee. They burn 10 minutes. So if they burn 10 minutes and they're a foot long, a 6-foot long fusee will give you an hour. And if you're going to be there switching for how many hours? Can you imagine rolling up with this 30-foot long fusee and say, fusees are only good for 10 minutes or 5, depending on your railroad. So the idea was good, but in my opinion, from a real standpoint, the practicality wasn't too good. Now the reason these fusees are out, now I've got a yellow one up here also. They are out my flagging distance, and my flagging distance is 8 poles, and Rule 99 states, generally speaking, you go out your full flagging distance, put your torpedoes down, you come back halfway, and you stay there. If you hear a train coming, you pop your red fusee. If you've been recalled on the Rio Grande, you drop the yellow. And then when you went back to yes,
what's the torpedo?
I'll get there. Oh, I'll get there in just a second. When you go back to your caboose, you drop the red fusee. Now, let me skip ahead. Now we're 8 poles out. Those little red dots will be representing my torpedoes. A torpedo is about a 1-inch by 1-inch square, about a 1/2 inch high. Basically, it's a piece of dynamite that you put on the tracks. And the locomotive goes over it and they go bang, bang, real loud. And what that does is wake up the engineer, like, we have something ahead of you that's not really in the mix. Probably the flagman's out there. He's put out his guns, as we used to call them. You run those over, it's telling you right away there's a train out there ahead of you, a lot closer than you're expecting. Hopefully it's farther enough away for you to stop. If not, you better call your cousin, because there's going to be a train wreck. Okay. So the reason I have 2 pins here, I am working with, who's the guy? Is it Logic Rail in Texas, Mike? Anybody?
What's that?
Who's the guy in Texas? Is it Logic Rail?
I don't know who you're talking about.
There's a guy that I'm working with. He makes these fusees, and I approached him a year or 3 ago. He's going to be working on a torpedo simulator that we can put in. So you can basically arm it. You'll trip the torpedoes, and it'll stay armed until you run over the. So we'll have lights, cameras, and action up here eventually. And that's 8 poles or 8 feet from where the red fusee was. And that's torpedo.
And Dwayne brought up a point. How many fusees do you lay out in the distance?
1. You lay 1 halfway back. Let me get back to it. This could be red or yellow, depending on your railway, but you have been recalled. Your torpedoes are out. Now you come back and you drop this for your protection, because you've got the torpedoes. And the Rio Grande definition of the yellow was proceed, preparing to stop at a red fusee at restricted speed for the full flagging distance. When you get
what about torpedoes? How many torpedoes did you put out and where?
Two.
Right. What about
two are required, 1 will work. Now they had lead fingers on them that you put over the rail. Sometimes they get scraped off by the wheel. A lot of times they both went off. most references where you put them no closer than 150 feet together, because if you're doing 60 miles an hour, you get the idea. You might not.
But what about, did your railroad, and I know some railroads have it to where you put 1, then 2, then 3 as you approach the hazard?
No, I never ran into that. All the flagging I've ever had to do was 2 torpedoes, and then we use these. Once you heard those torpedoes, it was restricted speed immediately, consistent with good train handling. But I've heard that, Mike, but I've never seen it.
Okay.
In print. So that's going to be one of those. Check your rule books, boys. Check under Rule 99 and see what it says, or your timetable special instructions. I'm trying to avoid getting into all that. But if you have a timetable of a railroad you're using, get into the back cover and by all means, get into the rule book. Like I say, I'm trying to keep it generic with specific examples, but the bottom line is get into your rule book and get into the back end of your timetable and see what the exact placements and usages were. And like I say, I've only been used to 2 torpedoes and basically 2 fusees.
And to that point, Paul, whenever I went to work and I hired out for the Cotton Belt used the Uniform Code of Operating Rules.
Correct.
That's the name of the book. And I've still got a copy of it, Uniform Code of Operating Book.
And there was also the Consolidated Code that was up from the Rock Island days.
Okay.
Well, Rock Island had their own, but it followed the Consolidated.
So when I went to work for the Southern Pacific, which owned the Cotton Belt as a wholly owned subsidiary, and I transferred from, they laid me off on the Cotton Belt. They said there's work in Houston. They sent me to Houston to work for them. When that happened, the SP had its own set of rules, a different rule book. So I had to learn a separate rule book before I could hire out and be certified to run on that railroad. So, and Paul, as many railroads as you've worked on, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, when I qualified in Albany, New York, now I'm glad everybody's sitting down. I worked NORAC in Penn Station, Metro North from Poughkeepsie down to CP12, Conrail on the bulk of the lines. Delaware and Hudson had their rule book. We went to Rutland under the Rutland rule book, and I went to Montreal under CROR. That's 6 rule books.
Wow.
We were rules qualified. And believe me, it's difficult at times keeping them straight. It's very difficult keeping them straight. They all have little nuances. They all have little nuances for the same rule, and you got to remember where you're at for what railroad. So it's great. The best thing I could say is if you're following a railroad, get a hold of a timetable and get a hold of the rule book for the areas you're working in and go accordingly. The sign, they'll tell you where to put signs. It's a great little thing. In my case, I shrunk them all down on the computer, cut them out, pasted them up on pieces of wood. Every one of mine is a printer occupied or whatever you want to call it. I guess I was doing 3D printing before it was in vogue.
Yeah.
But every one of mine I shrunk down and cut and paste. That's all I did. So
cool.
There you go.
Does anybody have any questions for Paul? Yes, David.
Explain the difference between control points and mileposts, and how are control points marked?
Did you hear the question?
Yeah. CPs, a control point is controlled by a remote operator, i.e. dispatcher, somebody sitting in a tower somewhere, etc. On Conrail and CSX in New York, they were listed as CP 145, CP 333, CP 439. That told you it was a control point. Somebody had a hold of it besides an intermediate signal. Mileposts are just a milepost. It's just, like going down the interstate highway, you see a milepost. Same thing on the railroad. In later days, on the Rock Island, they used, if they had a slow order or something they wanted to tell you about, it was milepost, say 100, pole 32. So what you did, every 10 on the 10-mile post, they had one ring, and a lot of railroads would do the same thing. For a quarter mile, they put a ring or a board with a white line on it or a black line, depending. For the quarter mile, two of these markings was a half a mile, and then after you got to the half mile, you knew that was 20. So when you got to the 3/4 mark, you just started counting after that 20th pole to get to whatever mile pole, like pole 22. You went to the half mile, you counted 2 more poles, and that's where this whatever they wanted to let you know about started. And it usually ended, say, milepost 100, pole 22 to milepost 100, pole 28. So you just counted poles in between and you were over it, whatever it was. So mileposts stand alone, but they can also be used as a locator. Or you can get an order saying you're good to go to CP 222. Well, you can't go through 222. You're only good to it. You got to get permission by that 222. Was that sufficiently muddled for you?
He's got a follow-up question.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Are control points marked like milepost are?
Yeah, I say yeah with a grain of salt. On the Conrail lines we used to work, they all had a sign on it. It was blue background with white lettering, CP, whatever. Now, when I worked on CSX or in Seaboard Coastline, we had just plain signs on our interlocking cabinet, our
The electrical box.
thank you, the housing, yeah.
Yeah.
Brain cramp. Don't get old, it doesn't pay, guys. We know that. They all had a mark on it, like South Elm City. This is the other interesting tidbit. Some railroads use mileposts. I grew up with locations. Well, where are you at? Well, we're just going by South Elm City. All right. Everybody on the railroad knew where you're at. I have no clue what the milepost was, but I knew it was South Elm City. There you go.
David,
So-
if you go to Saginaw and you start going through all those interlockings and stuff out there, you'll see the CP numbers on the side of a lot of the electrical boxes and stuff like that for control points based off of which dispatcher is handling that, either the UP dispatcher or the BNSF dispatcher, all through there.
So there's no relationship between control point and milepost. In other words, milepost 22 is not necessarily control point 22.
That's his question.
A milepost is this is where you are.
Yeah.
12. Now, at milepost 12, there can be CP Troy. They can be one and the same.
You also have CP milepost, CP 121.2.
Yeah.
Because on CTC, you always have your CPs where all your control boxes, control.
All right, okay, okay, makes sense.
CP.
But you have, I'm gonna say most mileposts have no relation to a control point.
Right.
They don't.
But they can be one and the same for a given spot. Right here, this could be milepost whatever and CP whatever.
Right, so why did they throw in the mix of CPs when they already had mileposts?
Because the control point is handled by a dispatcher and it's on his board as something that has nothing to do with the milepost.
Right. It's handled by a remote operator.
I
which
got
can
that
be a
part,
dispatcher.
I got that part, just seems like they complicated things by adding another set of numbers.
Well, let me even complicate it more. The Southern Pacific
Please
had
do.
something, yeah. The Southern Pacific had something called the SPINS system. Southern Pacific Industrial Numbering System. Okay? Every single location, industrial switching spot on the entire railroad was numerically numbered. So if you had a boxcar that was going to spin number 612093, then you knew, you could look up in your spins book, and that was spot number 3 at Purina Feeds in Chesterfield, Texas. Okay? And they numerically numbered everything that way. Had nothing to do with a milepost, had nothing to do with a control point. It was only the spot. Okay? And 612094 would be the next dock door for that same location, or not, you know. You see what I'm talking about? So, any other questions for Paul? Yes, sir.
For Santa Fe aficionados, I was able to do a little operator work in Fort Worth for a few times. I was kind of extra at that, but I always remember how they designated work areas when they were putting out train orders every night at midnight. And they'd give you a list about that long, and you had to get it all ready to repeat back to the dispatcher. But it was always like, so many poles west of milepost such and such to so many miles posts. Anyhow, from post to post, and the mile marker designated from which milepost it started, so many poles west, and to the milepost, so many poles west from there. So, and that set up so those guys, like he was saying, so the maintenance way guys, maintenance way guys could be protected, and also
Everything,
let
yeah,
everybody know.
yeah.
You know?
And I want to throw something else at you. If you're an operator on somebody else's layout, okay, and they're trying to set their layout up as accurately as possible, just like you've seen the pictures of Paul's, okay, don't wear long sleeve shirts that your sleeve is going to hang on a telephone pole and break it off.
Or a sweater.
Or a sweater, or something that's going to dangle down. Be respectful of the other person's layout, because he's worked very hard, as you can tell here through Paul, to make sure it's all set up accurately for your benefit as an operator. Okay, does that make sense?
Good looking scenery too.
It's very good looking scenery. And Paul, do you have a picture of your prototype model scene on your computer right there that you can bring up?
Not on this. Let me just look. See if it's in. Let me check my phone real quick, Mike.
Mossy, we're about to get to you, so be standing by, Mossy.
I need 5 minutes. I got to take care of the dog real quick.
Okay, go do that real quick. We'll stall for you. Mossy's got a new puppy.
Just remember, guys, we take our dogs to obedience school so they can train us.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
Oh man. No, but I can load it up and I'll load it up, Mike, in the middle when Mossy's doing his presentation.
Go ahead and do it now. So
Okay,
that he's we'll use that as filler while he's doing it. So while he's doing that, let me give you a little precursor to what you're about to see. One of the certificates that Paul did for his MMR was prototype modeler. The scene that he did was on the DNRGW. Is that right, Paul?
Yes. Yes.
DNRGW at what town?
Cimarron, Colorado.
Cimarron, Colorado. And he has a photograph of Cimarron, Colorado. And then he modeled that scene for Prototype Modeler. Okay. It's absolutely stunning to see the picture and his scene side by side. And that's what I want him to show you, because you've seen some of his work. Daryl made comment to his scenery work and things like that. So I want you to see that relationship for his prototype modeler certificate.
I'm getting there. My computer is as old as I am.
That's fine, Paul. By the way, I asked for something for show and tell earlier and nobody responded, but during the break, Cole brought up his Shay that he's working on and his flat car that he built in our clinic, on our flat car clinic. You guys need to come up and take a look at it if you can. It's absolutely stunning work. And the Shay, Cole, where are you? Okay, maybe outside, I guess. Paul, you need to beat him up next time you talk to Cole for not paying attention to your clinic.
That's fine.
Okay, I think most of this Shay is scratch built. So, yeah, it's an MDC kit, but I think the total parts thing on it is the parts count is way up there. It won't make any difference. It's still a kit.
Well, so locomotives is the one where you run into one small detail.
Oh, he didn't build a frame.
Bingo.
Didn't build a frame.
You gotta build a
So
frame
yeah.
from scratch or it's not scratch built.
But this work is really, really nice, and our crack video crew is turning it so that it faces the camera just exactly the way it needs to for the best angle and stuff. But the lighting's not so great from that side. So there we go. Now we're getting some more light on it.
Yeah, not enough.
Not enough, but it's helpful. Yeah. All right, Paul, how we doing, buddy?
About halfway there. I got it.
Halfway there. All right. Is Mossy back yet?
I'm here.
Are you back?
Yeah.
If you want to, nice. If you want to, Mike, go ahead. I can just get it ready to go at the end then if you want.
Okay. Mossy, is it okay if we start your clinic and then we let Paul show his prototype modeler scene? Because quite honestly, it kind of ties into what you're talking about as track work. If you don't mind letting him see that. Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and flip over. Our next clinician is coming to us from Santa Rosa, California, working on his MMR. He joined the NMRA about a year ago now, and he's worked his way very well through the program. He's currently got certificates submitted for author, scenery, volunteer, scratch building. He finished his last building for structures. He's working on locomotives and cars, and progressing right on through the program. He should have his MMR within the next 4 months or so. That's what I'm figuring based off of the progress he's making.
Yeah, no pressure, Mossy.
No pressure at all. Okay. And he's an absolutely stunning modeler. But without further ado, helping us learn more about backwoods track laying and what that track looks like, Rich Mossholder. We call him Mossy for short. Welcome, Mossy.
Thank you. Hope you guys are all doing well. Good morning. I'm going to go ahead and screen share real quick. Let's get this going.
Looks like you got a haircut since I saw you last there, son.
Yeah, I have my ears lowered.
Good for you.
I needed it, believe me. Can you guys see this?
Yeah, we can. You're getting pretty shabby, I want to tell you.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
Shabby or shaggy?
I was going for the Scooby-Doo look.
There you go. All right.
So you can see this all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Looks great.
So like Paul, I model HON3 and have been doing so for, geez, almost 20 years now. The way I got to starting in on hand laying track was not necessarily because I thought it was really cool. I got into it because I couldn't afford real track, you know, the manufactured track. And a friend of mine who taught me how to hand lay track and make switches came up with an idea that helped me out considerably. My first layout that I used hand laid track with was an HON30 layout. And if any of you have ever modeled HON30, you might realize that the only track available was either standard gauge N scale track, which doesn't look good at all for HON30, or you use a brand called Pico, and they make a couple of switches and they make some flex track. And it is, at the time for me, it was cost prohibitive. You know, I was an apprentice electrician. I didn't make much money. And this kind of served a purpose to get a layout built when I didn't have much money. Really, the only materials I needed to purchase to lay my track was rail and 15 thousandths piano wire, and that was it. And PC ties, but I made those myself out of PC board material for making turnouts. So let's go on to the next slide here. This is what the track looks like after I've done it. I think it looks pretty good. Each tie is unique and different. Spikes are all handmade, and it's just basic materials. I'll have a list for you here in just a second. So, tool list. You're going to want some pruning shears, some side cut pliers. A belt sander is helpful, but you don't need it. A 12-inch sanding block with 120 grit paper, needle nose pliers with a side cutter, and the ones I use are the cheapy China ones that you get from like Harbor Freight. Xuron rail nippers are a must, but do not use them on piano wire. You will destroy them in no time at all. They'll be just ruined. You're going to want some Xuron spiking pliers. If you don't have them, you can still use the needle nose pliers to drive your spikes. You're going to want track gauges, a soldering iron, paint brushes, and tweezers and stuff like that. Pretty basic run-of-the-mill stuff that I'm sure every modeler's already got. So here's kind of the look of the tools that I use. I didn't put a file on there for whatever reason. I don't know why I didn't put that on the list. And sanding blocks and so forth. So let's gather some materials. I get my ties from the same place the real railroads do, out in the woods. I've got redwood trees and oak trees in my yard, and I vary it up using different materials. Here's a list of materials that I use. And this is based on code 55 rail. For HON3, you can use code 55 for N scale. You can use it for O scale or S or standard gauge if you want really good looking old skinny rail. This is the material that I use. This is how I make my ties. I start with a bucket of twigs, and I take a tie and I measure, or I actually just take a standard tie out with me, and I hold it up to the twig, and whatever looks about the right width, that's where I start clipping. I use the pruning shears to do that. The next step is to flatten the twig, and that's where I use my belt sander, because quite frankly, sandpaper takes a long time. You flatten one side of it only, just one side. Then you take your side cut pliers, cut them to length, which is also just use a regular tie for length. This is why I like this type of a tie. You can see all of the different variation in the grain of the wood, plus you also get the bark material on the outside, and you get the rough cut edges, and it all kind of, it gives you that real backwoodsy kind of a cheap look. So like the railroads that we're working around here, the small branch lines, they would just cut down trees, mill two sides, throw the timbers down on the ground and lay some track. And they went through it as fast as they could because they needed to maintain a low budget and get to their revenue source. To prepare the roadbed, I used, for this example, I used cork, and I only used 1/2 of the double strip. And I did that for a reason. I wanted the ties to be hanging over the edge, and so that way when I ballasted, you could see where the ballast had fallen away and perhaps part of the tie was sticking out. So it was unprotected. And you can see that here. I glued it down using Gorilla Glue, wood glue, and flat side down. Let that sit until the glue is dry. Then you go over it with your sanding block. And that gets your ties all flat and level so that you have really good, even surface to lay your track. And that makes a big difference. Everybody wants good, smooth, clean running track. Next step, I use alcohol inks, and I just mix up a batch of it and stain each tie after the glue is dry. This is what it looks like after it's sanded and stained. I think it turns out pretty good. See the knots and all the different grain and everything else in it. If I'm going too fast or you guys have any questions, please speak up. I'm kind of moving through this quick. The dog's getting a little antsy to get back outside again. I also make my own spikes. And I do that because I don't like standard spikes. The commercially available spikes are usually made from mild steel. And I, for whatever reason, maybe it's just me, but every time I go to drive one through an oak tie, they bend. So I use 15 thousandths piano wire and I make my own. I'll just make them while I'm watching TV. And by the end of the night, I'll have a couple thousand spikes. It works pretty good, and there's a real simple way to make them. On the left, you'll see right here on my pliers, I have a little red mark. And that's the indicator of where I put the piano wire inside the pliers, and I flush it up to the edge and then bend it over 90 degrees. After that, I take that length that was in the head of the plier, or in the jaws of the plier, I push it through and nip it off. And on the right here, you can see the spike with the head. The nice thing about this is as you cut it, and you can't really see it in here, but you get a point. And that gives you your ability to drive the spike through the wood. The reason why the piano wire is nice is because it's spring steel and it does not like to bend. So it's also smaller in diameter, so you can actually drive it in through the tie a whole lot easier. To weather the rail, I just spray it with camouflage paint, and I do that before I even cut a length of rail. Everything is weathered ahead of time, and then I use dark rust and grimy black weathering powders to finish it off. Laying the track, beer is always a good thing to use.
Copious amounts.
That's right. So laying the track, obviously you're going to put your gauges on. I like to use what are called rolly gauges, and these are made from brass, and they are specific to code 55 rail, and they hold the rail exactly 10.5 millimeters apart for HON3. I simply just grip the head of the spike and just drive it through. It's pretty self-explanatory for anybody that's done their own handling track. The spike heads are a lot smaller than what you would get on commercial, and they tend to look a whole lot better than the commercial ones. And with the smaller rail, you're not typically bouncing over them with the flanges of your wheels.
Hey, Mark, can I throw one in real quick?
Yeah.
If you're not making your own spikes, one of the things you're going to find is that when they stamp the point in them, they don't always clean off both sides of it.
Right.
Square scrap of Homosoap, just a small one. And what I'll do is I'll take out and I'll dump a whole bunch of spikes out, and then I'll sit down, I'll pick up a spike, stab it into the Homosoap 2 or 3 times, and then stab it over and let it sit. Grab another one, set it. And I'll do that with every spike in there. And it does 2 things. Homosoap is sand and paper. So it'll break off any of that stuff that didn't clear off when they stamped it. It will also help sharpen the spike, and you're less likely to split a tie with it that way. And I'll do it a couple of times, set it aside until I've got, 3 or 4 dozen of them sitting out on one end of that piece of Homosoap, and they're already standing up. So as I'm actually laying track and I'm working on keeping everything engaged, I can just reach over and grab a spike and drop it, not have to worry about picking it up, lining it up in my pliers, then doing all the work. I can just pick it up and go. So.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Yep.
For laying turnouts, I have my turnout. I make my own turnouts, and this one in particular, I laid down on top of the ties so I could space them accordingly, as you see in the left-hand side, before I sanded anything down. That way I have all the appropriate clearances and so forth. On the right-hand side, you'll notice there are no PC ties. And what I do is I lay my ties, I spike the turnout down with the PC boards attached to them. And then after it's spiked in place, I go back and I remove the PC ties with my soldering iron, and then sand down some new ties that will fit appropriately, slide those under, and then spike those down too. And that gives a much nicer look, I think, than having, these naughty, cruddy looking boards and then perfectly spaced and uniform PC ties. I think it gives a better look, and it takes a little bit of effort to do, but I think in the long run, it's worth it. One thing else I'd like to point out, if I can find my pointer, here it is. This particular tie right here, one piece, and I thought it worked out pretty good because it's got about the shape you'd need for a turnout, and that kind of locks the entire thing together for one tie before it splits off. Kind of a fun thing, and I absolutely love the fact that no 2 ties are the same. Different colors, different textures, different wood grains, the whole 9 yards. Some of them still have moss attached to them, and my last name being Mossholder, that's perfect.
Hey, Mossy, there's a question somebody popped in the chat. Do you dry your twigs first, and if so, for how long?
No, I just pick up dead twigs. Either I'll bust them off. They have to be dead though. You don't want to pick green ones. Just get the dead twigs, and then clip them. You can dry them if you want. I've never done that. It's not made a big difference at all either way. I usually get them around August, so around here they're pretty damn dry to begin with.
Talk about wildfires, right?
Yeah, we get those occasionally every year. So for ballast, I like to use just sifted dirt that I get out of my yard, which works really well. And then you'll notice the brush. This is probably the best tool I have ever found for spreading ballast in my life. This thing is fantastic. You can pick them up at Home Depot. You can get them at any of the big box stores that sell paint. And this is an edge trimming paintbrush. And this thing, you sprinkle your ballast down and you just drag that across and you're done. There's none of this sweeping with a paintbrush and all that other stuff. And this fine work that takes hours and hours and hours. This is the fastest, most efficient, and the best way to spread ballast that I've ever seen or found. And they're cheap. You can pick them up for like $3 and you can get replacement heads if you want. Highly recommended. And you can see in the picture on the left, that's one sweep with that brush to get the ties and the ballast to look like that.
Mossy, is a comment from the audience?
What's that?
On your second photo there where it's going over the track and you get the finished product. The first photo showed kind of a on edge look to it. Yeah.
This picture?
Yeah. Okay, so you just put it down flat on the track, that flat face, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that we wasn't gonna drag it on
That,
one
that
edge or
little
the
that
other.
little pad that you're seeing facing you in the picture, it's just a sponge and it's got like little hairs on it.
Right.
So you're just pointing that straight down and dragging it across the track. It helps it out really nicely.
That's all there is to it. And in the in this photo here, the photo on the left, you can see that is one pass with that brush, and it goes that quick. It's I cannot say enough about how much I am thankful that I have that thing. I have a large layout, and doing ballast takes a long time, and this has considerably shortened a tedious task. And of course, glue your ballast down in the normal way. Pretty simple stuff. Weathering the track. If you'd like to know about this photograph, this was in Nevada, and we were riding this train, and there was a student engineer, and he plowed into the dirt berm at the end of the line. He didn't apply the brakes fast enough, so we had a crash when I was riding the rails, and they dragged they pushed the train backwards the entire way back to the yard, and they tore up ties, grade crossings, and all kinds. They made an absolute mess. Pilot, Cowcatcher.
I love the sign on the front of the engine that says "Safety First."
Yeah.
Yep. It was in it.
Northern, isn't it?
What's that?
That's the Nevada Northern, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Cool railroad.
It is a cool railroad, and you can actually go there. And when I went there on this trip, we rented a caboose, and that was my hotel room for the night, and it was fantastic, sitting right out there in the yard. I do not recommend a bed in a caboose to anybody unless you want a bad back the next day, because it's a piece of plywood and about a ½ inch thick piece of foam on top of it. And that's what you get.
If that.
And there was no bathroom in the caboose, so we had to go hike it for a while just to use the restroom. Great trip though, had a blast. They have a cat named Dirk the cat that lives in the engine shop. He was originally white and orange cat. He is dark gray and black from all the soot and grime and grease. And he even has his own Facebook page. Dirk the cat. Anyway, you're going to want weeds and crud and grime and junk and all kinds of stuff, common stuff. Anything you can find to throw down to make your track look cruddy, do it. You'll notice over here, these are pretty uniform ties, but if you look at the edges over here, a lot of the older ties, they're all beat up. It makes good sense to do stuff like that, and you can do that with, I like to use a stainless steel wire brush. I like to use hobby knives and just kind of dig at the ends. Whatever you can do to make them look old and worn out and beat up is going to make a big difference. And after you do that, take some good India ink wash and go over it. So it really highlights those areas. And then when that's dry, go back over it again with that stainless steel little toothbrush looking thing. And that'll highlight some of the edges and work on some more of the ugliness of it. You're gonna want to do weeds and stuff like that. This is still the same track that I showed you before, that same turnouts and so forth. I did this scene for this clinic. It took me about a day to do the whole thing, and it's still, you can see the glue is still wet. I was really trying to crank this out. Again, more with the spikes. You don't have to spike every tie. I know the prototype does, but that gets awfully tedious. And I can't do it. I've done it before. It's too much. You know, thousands and thousands of ties to get, 20 feet of track. Thousands of spikes. It's tedious. Whenever you do an abandoned spur, you can see down at the bottom, old cruddy split ties, ties sticking out above the ballast, weeds and plants and bushes growing over the top of it. I put some rocks over the track just to keep a train from rolling through there. And that's pretty much it. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Good. Good job. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job, Mossy. Thank you for joining us today. You're always welcome. You come in a lot of times, and we sure appreciate it. We always enjoy you joining us from California. Thanks for the clinic. It was a great job.
Oh, thank you. And I appreciate being invited to come to your meetings. It's nice. We don't really have that sort of thing here, so I do appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. That's one of the reasons we do what we do, is for places and people that don't have that opportunity to have a meeting in their area. So we try to fill in that hole for people if they would like to join us. So spread the word. Okay.
I will.
All right. Guys, it is now 12:32. We normally try to knock off about 12:30. Anybody have any questions or comments before we adjourn? All right. What happens on December the 11th?
Christmas party.
What time? 6 p.m. Where? No, not here. Down at the convention center. Okay? Attaboy, Trapper. That's why we put you in charge. Okay? Trapper says here. No.
Hey, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Buhrke's ready.
Oh, yeah. I want you guys to see the picture of the prototype modeler. Paul, go ahead and share if you would. While he's doing what he's doing, shameless plug for my wife. If you've not seen the cups that the ladies are having, the bling cups that are the tumblers, like Dwayne, pull a tumbler out for a second. That have all glitter and sayings and stuff on them and everything. They're a tumbler about like this. And by the way, this is one of the cups that the Union Pacific gave us for working with 4014. Right. So if you haven't picked up your cup yet, I'm still working on that. I meant to bring them today to pass them out, but walked out this morning and forgot them, even though I had them set out to bring. But anyway, the cups, this is one of the ones this is the size cup that PJ makes, but she does custom cups. And she's at a craft show at Brewer High School today. And she went over there with 50 cups, and she's already sold just shy of 20 of them today.
Here's mine.
Oh, yeah, Mossy. Bring Mossy back up to the main screen.
There you go. This is the one she made for me. I use it quite a bit. And she did this really cool. I don't know if you can see it very well, but
Wood grain, yeah.
it's
That
like
wood grain.
Yeah, it's a wood grain. Really cool. And that's just paint. But it looks
She started out, that was a silver cup when it started. And she made it wood grain, and then the Silver Tongue Southern, yes, we go there. That's the saying for Mossy's Railroad. That's his railroad. So anyway, but she's got those cups. Yes, sir.
The guys here that have not received the potluck email, raise your hand, please.
Did you get the notice about this meeting?
I normally get your email stuff.
Okay. Is your membership active?
Yes, it is.
Then your email address should be accurate. And if you didn't get it, I don't know why.
I'll check my junk email. It should be in.
Jay, the same thing. I don't know why. Mike, I don't know why.
And you didn't get it either?
Check your spam. That's the only thing I can say. But yeah, send me a direct email back if you have not received the potluck email about the dinner. Send me an email back to director@cowcatcherdivision.org and I will forward it to you specifically. Okay? All right.
There, you got it, Mon. You got it.
Whoa! Here we go. Now, can you zoom in at all?
Oh, my God.
Hey, you're asking him way.
I know.
Yeah, bottom right. There you go.
Again, there you go. One more. Do it again.
There you go.
Okay. There you go. Perfect. Stop right there. The top is a photograph. The bottom is his model. Look at that. Gentlemen,
It's worth waiting for.
it was worth waiting for. This is how you do prototype modeler.
Yep.
That is exactly what the whole thing is set up for, is to model a particular scene and reproduce it. How cool is that? Great job. It was worth the wait, Paul.
You
You've been redeemed.
Wait, I can't wait till Tuesday's phone call.
Hey, thanks, Paul. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Have a great week. We'll
Thanks,
see you at the
guys.
Christmas party. Bye-bye.
How are you?